White smoke. White smoke. It's white smoke. Habemus Papa.
This is a CBS News Special Report. I'm Scott Pelley in Rome. The smoke billowing out of the chimney of the Sistine Chapel is white. This is occurring at this moment. You are watching it live. The smoke began coming out of the chimney just seconds ago. The smoke is white, which signifies that a new pope of the Roman Catholic Church has been elected by the 115 cardinals down below in the Sistine Chapel. A new pope has been elected on this, the end of the first full day. You're beginning to see the bell swinging in St. Peter's Basilica. You'll hear it in a moment. The bell serves as confirmation that this is white smoke and a new pope has been elected. Let's take this scene in just for a moment with thousands of the faithful filling St. Peter's Square.
Oh my goodness. Look at that. It's white. On him.
The crowd is pushing forward.
If you are just joining us, you are watching the celebration in St. Peter's Square as a new pope has been elected for the Roman Catholic Church. There is the white smoke from the Sistine Chapel, and thousands upon thousands of the faithful filling St. Peter's Square here in Vatican City. Joining me is Nora O'Donnell of CBS This Morning. This is what we've been waiting for a couple of days, Nora.
This is incredible to hear the crowd there that has jammed into St. Peter's Square, waiting in anticipation. You can see actually the people rushing towards the front as if to want to see the Pope immediately. This bell, the first time they used it in 2005, known as the Campanone. And this crowd is going to get more packed as more people come here to see the Pope.
Now, we do not know who the new pope is, and we will not know until that is announced from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. Down in the crowd at the moment is CBS News correspondent Mark Phillips. Mark, what are you seeing?
Well, I see what you see, but I'm right in the middle of it here, Scott, and it's quite an experience, I must say. In fact, the square is not only full, but in about the half hour or so leading up to the smoke and the bells ringing, the crowd, I don't know, sensing something, started to get larger and larger until an hour or so ago, maybe half the square was full. In the last half hour, the whole square filled up, and the Via della Conciliazione, which is the big road that leads up to St. Peter's, also filled up with people. This square, the Vatican says, can hold 90,000 or more people. If it spills along the street, then the crowd is perhaps as many as 100,000. Difficult to make these assessments, but there was something in the air. The excitement built through the late afternoon as we approached 7 o'clock here or so. What time is it now? It is just at 7. And Rome, sensing something was happening, started to move towards St. Peter's, as it has historically done. And their suspicions were, in fact, proved out. The smoke was white, a huge roar. I don't know if you could hear it from up there, but down here, a great roar rose from the gathered multitudes when the white smoke poured out, and the bells are now ringing here and across Rome. Scott?
The bells are pealing all across the Eternal City. A new pope, the signal was sent up the chimney of the Sistine Chapel just about 7 minutes ago. We do not yet know who the new pope is, but we expect to hear that from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica in the next several minutes. Joining us is Monsignor Anthony Figueroa. Monsignor, tell us what is happening now. We have a new pope, but what is happening with this new pontiff and the cardinals beyond where we can see?
Well, as we know, the new pope, and it's a very emotional moment for us, will have been asked by the sub-dean of the College of Cardinals whether he would accept this great responsibility, because once the keys are given, they cannot be taken back. And he said, accepto, I will accept. And then he will have been asked, what name will you take as the new Supreme Pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church? We're going to get that name now. He will now enter the very famous room of tears. He will have time on his own, and he will choose the size of his new white vestment. He will be dressed now in the new papal clothes. For the first time, we will know we have a new pontiff. And from there, every single cardinal will come forward to the new pope to promise allegiance and obedience.
There are 3 sizes of papal vestments, small, medium, and large, and 7 pairs of shoes of various sizes, because of course it was not known until this moment to the cardinals who the new pope would be. But presumably, as Monsignor Figueroa was just telling us, presumably the Pope is in the room of tears and is dressing in those vestments now. It will be several minutes before he is introduced to the world, maybe as much as 45 minutes before he is introduced to the world on the balcony at St. Peter's. If you look on the 2nd floor, directly in the middle, you can see the balcony, or could see the balcony in that shot. That is the balcony where the new Pope will be introduced to the world in several minutes. Joining us is Deirdre Gallagher, a senior editor. That is where the Pope will be coming out shortly. Delia Gallagher, senior editor with Inside the Vatican, a long-time Vatican reporter. Delia, what do you think is going on just now in the Sistine Chapel?
Well, I think what Father said is exactly what's going on, that they have to still do a few things. They have a gospel reading, for example. They sing a song, Te Deum, which gives glory to God for this choice. And I want to say that I'm glad that they were able to do it so quickly. I think that's a good sign. You know, we'll see who it is, but regardless of who it is, I think the fact that we've got somebody on the 2nd day is a good sign of unity for these cardinals. I'm sure they're relieved.
This would have been the 6th ballot, Nora O'Donnell. How does that compare to recent conclaves?
It's rather quick. I mean, given what were thought about in a lot of divisions within the church and the unexpected resignation of Pope Benedict. In fact, in the last 6 conclaves, the average has been 6 ballots. This was 5 ballots. And in fact, at the Mass, to start this whole thing, the Dean of the Cardinals asked for unity. And it is clear that the Cardinals heard him about being unified, to present a unified message at a time when this church is at a crossroads.
You know, Nora, I miscounted. This is the 6th ballot because, of course, there were 4 today. This was the last of the day. And yesterday there was 1, which makes 6. So that's the average of the last several conclaves.
That is right.
No, I'm sorry, it's 5 ballots. It's 5 ballots.
Yeah.
I'm going to get this straight yet. There were 4 ballots today, 1 yesterday. This is the 5th, of course, and last ballot that was taken today. There was a lot of drama earlier because we expected the smoke to come at about 7 o'clock when the Cardinals were expected to take their last vote of the day, and then it didn't. And time went by, and people began to wonder, well, is this it? And sure enough, it was. We're told that drivers in Rome are abandoning their cars in the streets and are running to St. Peter's Square because they cannot get to the traffic. Let's wait and just pause for a moment and take in this remarkable moment. The first time in more than 600 years that a pope has retired and been replaced by a new pope. Now, this conclave differs from the previous conclave that elected Benedict XVI. In that conclave, Benedict XVI was a clear front runner going in, and it was no great surprise that Cardinal Ratzinger was elected and became Benedict XVI. This has been a very different scenario this time. No clear front runner had emerged at the point that the conclave began yesterday. So it's still quite a mystery who the new pope may be. However, there are several cardinals that have been mentioned prominently, and Alan Pizzi has been going through that list for us. Alan?
Well, Scott, the first one that was mentioned was Cardinal Scola of Milan. It was said that he was in competition with Cardinal Scherer of Brazil, and then people were even talking about Sean O'Malley of Boston. So the field, as when they went in, was thought to be wide open. Now, people thought because it was so wide open, it would narrow down considerably, but it would narrow down slowly, and no one really expected, none of the pundits, the people who have been watching this all along, expected it to come this fast on the fifth ballot. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether the Cardinals went for an Italian, which the Italians wanted, having given the papacy away to foreigners for the last 2 times, or whether they've gone for a foreigner. And if they've gone for a foreigner, is it outside of Europe? That's a rarity in itself. It's been a long, long time since there's been a pope from outside of Europe. So that's something that will be quite stunning if it happens. How long it will be, we don't really know. The Pope, of course, can pause and pray. Meanwhile, that giant bell is summoning people from all over Rome, and it's interesting to note that that bell was cast in 1786 and it weighs 11 tons, which is one good reason why you can hear it all over Rome, Scott.
Alan, thank you very much. Flags from many nations being raised in the square tonight. We've seen the flag of the United States, Argentina, Chad, flags from all over the world, people hoping that the cardinal from their part of the world might be the new pope. Monsignor Figueiredo, what will happen next? How will the pope be introduced to the world?
What we are going to see now is the cardinal certainly emerging at all of those different windows of St. Peter's Basilica, and eventually we will see some of the acolytes come forward with the deacon, the cardinal deacon. His name is Cardinal Jean-Louis Tauran. He's a French man, and together with the crucifix, the sign of Jesus, in the midst of all of this. And the cardinal deacon will say those words we have been waiting for over a month now. Annuncio vobis gaudia magnum. I announce to you this great news. Habemus papam. We have a pope. And the first name we will hear is his Christian name, his first name. And that will give us a clue of who that is. Of course, that will be in Latin. So it's going to be a night full of excitement. And then he will say cardinal and the second name, and then we will know exactly who it is. And eventually we'll know the name he has taken as the 266th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church.
There were Italian popes non-stop for 450 years, and then a Polish pope, John Paul II, followed by a German pope, Benedict XVI, and we will know in a short while who the next pope of the Roman Catholic Church will be. Nora O'Donnell, when the Pope comes out on that balcony, it will be the first time, of course, he's introduced to the world as Pope, and we're also told that that balcony is used only for this occasion, only to introduce a new Pope to the world.
That is right, the Logia blessings. And there you see those red curtains that were hung just in the last few days as part to get ready for this ceremony. And as you pointed out, Scott, given that Europeans and Italians have controlled the papacy for centuries, will we have a pope from the Americas? Because of those 3 names that we heard Alan Pizzi mention, 2 of them are from the Americas. That could signal a change for the 1.2 billion Catholics worldwide.
Delia Gallagher, we understand that the Pope once he has donned the vestments of his station, will go to the Pauline Chapel for a moment of prayer by himself to reflect. He will be beneath Michelangelo's Crucifixion of St. Peter, which is a painting of the crucifixion, of course, of the first leader of the church, and must have special meaning to a pope.
Yes, you know, Scott, anytime we've heard about the election of a pope, it's always been followed by the fact that the pope felt the burden of what he had just accepted. As much as he did accept, but he's always said, you know, I mean, Pope Benedict said he felt like he was being led to the guillotine. It's a difficult job, and I don't think that any of them really want it. So I do think that they ask for help from God, from their fellow cardinals as well, and take very seriously the fact that they have taken on a job which is really one of the most difficult jobs in the world, let's be honest. I mean, we've just had a pope who has stepped down from it because it is so difficult and requires such strength of mind and body, as the Pope said. So yes, they do take that moment and then come out onto the balcony and have some time to speak to the Roman people. Remember Karol Wojtyła, when he came out and made that immediate connection with the crowd because he spoke in Italian with the Polish accent, and people didn't know who he was. So we'll see tonight.
Mark Phillips is down there among the tens of thousands of faithful from all across the world. Mark, what are they saying? What are you hearing?
Well, just to carry on from that point, we're at the second stage, if you will, of the suspense of this evening. The first suspense, of course, was Pope or no Pope. We now know there is a Pope. But this vote, this fifth vote that has produced a Pope, is right on the cusp, traditionally, of the choice between the favorites going into this conclave, the ones who Alan mentioned, or some of the lesser figures who weren't given much chance, the long shots. And this vote, coming at number 5, which of course is one more than the vote that elected Cardinal Ratzinger to become Benedict, this vote was just in the middle. It could be that some of the favorites, Scoldo would be the Italian, the reformer in many people's minds, would be at a point where he could have garnered the 2/3 majority necessary, or the Cardinals could have turned away, made compromises, gone for a compromise candidate from among the lesser types. I don't want to start throwing names out because part of the fun is to wait and see who steps out onto the balcony or who is announced as the new pope in the famous announcement here. But that's added to the suspense of the evening. So we're in stage 2 of this wonderful drama, this wonderful religious and political drama that takes place only here. Scott?
As you can see, it is a drizzly night here in Vatican City, a cool, drizzly night, but that hasn't dampened the enthusiasm of the crowd one bit. And Monsignor Figueiredo, I wonder, what is this moment like for you? What is this moment like for a person who is a priest in this church?
When a Holy Father dies, or when a Holy Father steps down, as priests, we sincerely feel as orphans. We are fatherless. We do not have a father. And I think you were looking at those images at the crowds. I think in my own heart, isn't it fantastic to know that we are given the Father, that the cardinals, after many, many hours of deliberation, 10 congregations they were talking, this is the 5th vote, 115 cardinals from throughout the world, with the help of the Holy Spirit, have decided on one man to take us forward now. You know, we had the great John Paul II, a man who was illumined, enchanted the world with his charisma. We had Pope Benedict XVI with his great homilies, but at a moment of sincere difficulty, the Pope, who is going to come on this balcony now, Scott and Nora, is going to really be so significant. The name he takes is going to give us a clue. And also his message, Urbi et Orbi. That means to the city of Rome, because he is the Bishop of Rome, but also to the world. is going to give us an enormous indication of the man he is and the direction he wants to take the church. On the 19th of April 2005, Pope Benedict said, "I'm a simple, humble laborer in the vineyard of the Lord." I think he lived that. What will this new Holy Father say to us tonight?
This is the first time that a former Pope, Benedict XVI, will be watching the election of his successor. The Vatican press office has told us that Benedict XVI has been watching on television from the papal summer residence, which is about 15 miles outside of Rome. And presumably that is still true at this moment. The crowd is waiting to hear the name, as we all are. The senior Cardinal Deacon, Jean-Louis Tarrant, will walk out onto the balcony, announce to the world that a pope has been elected, and will give us the name. And we are expecting that to happen sometime over the next half hour or so. Nora O'Donnell, the new pope at this point is very likely in the Sistine Chapel being greeted by all of the cardinals who just elected him.
That's exactly right, and they are likely praying together, singing the Te Deum, the church's traditional hymn of thanks to God, and then he will leave the chapel. He has likely already been in the Room of Tears, just off the sacristy, which I was just in several days ago, where those clothes are laid out, those 3 different white cassocks in small, medium, and large, and the 7 red shoes. On those white cassocks are 33 buttons to symbolize the years that Jesus Christ spent on earth. Also, Pope John the 23rd was known to call these cassocks the first thorns of the papacy because they're usually pinned up because they don't know who the Pope will be. And so there are normally pins in it. And so Pope John the 23rd called it the first thorns of the papacy there. But there you see inside.
Where that is inside the Sistine Chapel. This is the area where the Pope would be changing. Delia Gallagher?
And you remember in 2005 when Cardinal Ratzinger came out on the balcony, and in fact they didn't have time, and he probably didn't want to properly fit his cassock, and so you could see the black from his sweater underneath when he kind of raised his hands, and everybody said, "Oh, what happened to the tailors?" But apparently he was the one who kind of wanted to not keep the crowd waiting and to move out. So obviously they do as quick a job as possible to get them fitted and move them out to the balcony.
Mark Phillips is down in this remarkable scene in the square, and Mark, I believe you've found some Americans in that crowd.
Let's go. Yeah, Fred, let's go. Come on.
Yes, we have found some Americans, and we're just getting them in here.
Yeah, we're from New Hampshire and Boston.
New Hampshire and Boston.
Right.
The whole crowd. I don't know how many of you can see.
There's 5 of us.
Is this just an accidental visit, or are you?
No. We're here on vacation. Today was the day that we were supposed to come to Rome in St. Peter's Square, and we just wanted to ring in the new Pope and see the white smoke, and just to see if we were lucky enough.
We were hoping to.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did.
And you were lucky enough.
And actually, we were leaving. It was getting cold and wet and rainy. We just decided that we may take a run, and as we did, I said to Vicky, slow down, walk slowly, and the next thing I know, white smoke came out of the
We
staff.
know that's Vicky. What's your name?
Bruce.
Bruce, Vicky, and I'm not sure how many of you can actually see in this.
Bruce,
there are 5
Pam,
here.
Evelyn, Vicky, Fred.
All right, and all from New England.
Yes, we are.
Okay, and you didn't come here because there was a papal election going on. You just came because you were visiting. All right.
We're on vacation. We've been playing for a year.
So,
Which tour is giving us a tour of the whole city.
it's needless to say, a bit of an exciting time.
Oh, it's just chills running up and down our spine. It's
amazing.
The crowd was just amazing. I'm telling you.
What did you think, and where were you when the smoke started to pour out?
We were like on the right-hand side right here,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you right now, the smoke just
We
poured
were
out of the
close, up
stack.
close.
We were very, very close for the longest time.
Did you recognize it as white? Yes, there is a Pope smoke.
I
Absolutely.
recognized white
Absolutely.
right off the bat and yelled accordingly.
It was really white.
It was very,
There
very
was no
very
mistake what was coming out of that stack.
Because the last time it wasn't so white, and it took us a while to figure it out.
Right.
All right. But this time, and what did you feel when that happened?
Chills.
Pure excitement.
Goosebumps. It was just phenomenal. The crowd just exploded.
All right. Now here's the question of the day: who are you hoping it is?
An Italian Pope.
An
That's
Italian
someone
Pope.
who makes good decisions
Yes.
for the church.
An Italian Pope.
Yeah.
We're due.
Are you Italian?
I'm Sicilian. There's a difference.
Even Sicilian.
Yes.
All right. But you would accept an American Pope?
I'd
but-
accept any Pope.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Any
And,
Pope.
all right. And, there's been all this talk about the church needing reform and moving forward and what have you. What kind of hopes do you have for this next papacy, no matter who we hear is announced as Pope?
Well, I would just hope that he would do the right thing that would really bring the Catholic religion up to where it's supposed to be in standards. And I don't know. I know he's not going to be able to make too many changes.
Positive.
I mean, they're old school, but anything positive that he would do, I think would help this.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We all stand here in anticipation, seeing who it will be.
Yes.
Thank you very much for stepping out of the rain and
Thank you.
having a little chat with us.
Pleasure.
Scott?
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Father Figueiredo, what are we looking at now?
This is the military band of the Vatican, I believe, or of Italy. Here, it's great excitement, I think, for Italians as well. Remember, prior to John Paul II, here come the Swiss Guards, which means something is going to happen very, very soon now. And it means, yes, I know all of them. This is the chaplain of the Swiss Guards. They too are given that very special mission to defend the Pope, even to the point of death. So imagine the emotion going through their hearts too. They want to defend the Pope, and from this evening they have a job again.
I should mention to the audience that for a period of years you were the personal assistant to Pope John Paul II. So these are people and this is a place that you know intimately.
Oh, absolutely, yes. These are humans who love the Pope. As Roman Catholics, we love our Pope. He is our papa, as the Italians say. And we want to know who this man is to give us direction now in our lives. It's an interesting day as well for Catholics. Not by coincidence, it's March the 13th. For Roman Catholics, it's a day dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary. So I think it's very significant that this is a day that the Holy Father can say, I put my papacy under the Mother's protection, just as John Paul II did back in 1978.
And of course, a conclave during the season of Lent as well.
Yeah, these are all great signs for us.
Delia Gallagher, as we watch the Italian military band leading in the Swiss Guard and await the announcement of the name of the Pope, tell us what you think is happening inside now and give us a little description of what we're looking at as well.
Well, I think shortly they'll be walking down the hallway towards the loggia, towards the balcony, to step out and give the announcement, probably with as much anticipation and trepidation as the rest of the crowd feels. I think, it's one of the things the Vatican does best, all of the pomp and circumstance and the beauty, frankly, of the ceremonies that the Vatican does. And this is the queen of all the ceremonies, the Conclave. And it's a very different time right now, you see, because when Pope Benedict stepped down, I think there was obviously a sense of kind of consternation and concern about what is going to happen. So I think the fact that they were able to choose a pope now, and we'll see who he is, but regardless of who he is, I think it's been a very good thing for them that they were able to come together and agree on one person, given the circumstances of the resignation.
Nora, the last election of the Pope, the election of Pope Benedict XVI, there was an enormous confusion at about this point in time because no one could decide whether the smoke was black or white. It was sort of a mid-gray, and the bells didn't ring right away.
That's right.
This time, the Vatican has made sure that those problems didn't occur.
In fact, we learned today from a Vatican spokesman that they brought in a chemist to work one of these stoves and use specific chemicals to make sure that the smoke was very black and that the white smoke was very white. So there was no confusion this time. As you mentioned, in 2005, there was confusion. It wasn't until the campanone, that big bell here in St. Peter's Basilica, started to peel, that people knew that the cardinals had selected a pope.
And in 2005, the man who rings the bell didn't get the message right away. And so there was quite a delay and a lot of confusion. One of the CBS News correspondents who was here that day is Alan Pizzi, and he's with us here tonight as well. Alan?
Scott, it's a very different night than it was then. As you said, we could not tell what the smoke was like. We had to wait for the bells, and the bells were delayed. And it was one of those things where you're a reporter standing in front of a camera, you think, okay, now what do I do? Am I going to go out on a limb or not? Well, eventually, of course, we did get the bells, and it was fine. One of the things that strikes me about this, what's going on now, is that this is a deeply religious moment. The Pope is the head of 1.2 billion Catholics, a 2,000-year-old history of the Church, and yet it's a celebration, a public celebration. Quite apart from the band, people have been cheering and jumping up and down all along. And I think the idea of a pope appeals to people just because they think, even if they're not religious, and Italy is not as religious as you would think, having the Vatican here, in spite of having the Vatican here, but I think people just like the idea of having a pope, perhaps because there is some kind of moral center, which of course presents a great challenge. That was one of the things that the cardinals had to be thinking about when they were looking for this pope. Can he represent that moral center in a way that will convince people that the church is dealing with its many problems, be they the sex abuse scandal, the loss of priests, the loss of congregations, just general distrust in the church, a fading away, if you will, from religion. So whoever comes out on that balcony behind me is going to represent many, many things to many, many people. It must be a tremendously trying time for the man who's going to do that. That's one of the reasons that Benedict put in the idea that the Pope would pause for 10 minutes on his own to pray, to, I suppose, gather his thoughts, gather his spirit, get himself together, ready to face the crowd. John Paul II came out and at one point said, I want you all to go home and give your children a big hug and tell them it's from the Pope. And that's the kind of warmth I think that they're going to need from the new Pope. It'll be interesting to see who he is. As Mark said, it's part of the fun, part of the suspense. And who knows how long we'll have to wait. I guess that depends on how long it takes him to decide it's time to come out, Scott.
Alan, thank you very much as we're watching the Italian military bands march in, a sign of unity and solidarity between the Italian people and this Vatican City, which is, of course, its own country, its own state. If history is any guide, in about 10, maybe 15 minutes, the senior cardinal deacon, Jean-Louis Theron, will walk out on what is called the loggia, which is up on the second floor on the face of St. Peter's Basilica. A large balcony there, now draped in red, as you can see it right there. We'll see those doors swing open. The senior cardinal deacon, Theron, will walk out and he will announce to the world in Latin that a pope has been elected, and he will give us the name of the new pope. And shortly thereafter, the pope will come out to greet the crowd, and if he follows the example of the previous Pope Benedict XVI, he will also have some remarks accepting this tremendous responsibility and blessing the city and the world before he begins his papacy. As he begins his papacy. Nora O'Donnell, you've been watching this. I understand that you've been told that the president has been informed, President Obama has been informed that there's a new pope.
That's right. The president has been doing some peacemaking of his own, meeting with Republicans up on Capitol Hill, and we're told that he was handed a note and told that the white smoke had come up and that there was a pope. There is some speculation that since the president will be in Israel next week, that he could stop by here. I think that's unconfirmed. Maybe the Vice President Joe Biden, who is a Catholic, would attend the new swearing in, if you will. That's the word we use in the United States, the ceremony for the new pope.
I want to pause just for a moment. Let the folks at home take this in, because it is a spectacle that you see only once every couple of decades. St. Peter's Square on a cool, drizzly night in Vatican City. A night of history. Again, we are expecting that we will be introduced to the new Pope in something on the order of 10 or 15 minutes. These things are not exact. The time is being kept by whoever the new Pope is. He is deciding how long to stay in the Pauline Chapel to pray, how long he will receive the greeting of the other 114 cardinals who have just elected him Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. Mark Phillips is down in that huge crowd. People have come from all over the Eternal City. They have filled the square and all the streets around it. Mark, what are you seeing?
Well, I see the crowd getting larger and larger, and I see Marion and Aaron, who are two women who were in the crowd, and they've had an interest in this whole thing. The next Pope is about to be announced. You're wearing pins that say ordained women, which is a bit of a hint. So what are you looking for from this man that's going to walk out onto that balcony, we hope, quite soon?
We're looking for a man that is open to dialogue and inclusion. A man that remembers that his job is to be like Jesus Christ, the original, and to include women, to go out of his way to include women, and to accept that the church needs to be healed and that one half is being excluded.
Very high expectations. Aaron, you're wearing the pin. It says ordained women.
Yes.
Presumably that's what you want. You want even women to go as far as women priests in the Catholic Church.
Of course, yes. I mean, that's my dream as a child, is to see a woman up there on the altar. But, you know, a first start would be, as Miriam said, opening dialogue. That's so important. Our church has been, you know, really needs some healing from the abuse and the scandal. And there's so many people that have been marginalized from our church that are really looking for a reformer. So someone who's willing to meet the people of the church where they're at. And, you know, for us, as part of women's ordination worldwide, really hoping for someone, again, to open dialogue, talk with women, be with us in community.
The women's issue in the church, of course, is a large one, but there are other challenges the church has been facing.
Absolutely.
We all know about the abuse scandal, of course, and the terrible things there. But also in terms of the organization of the church, what have you. Is it just talk about communication? Is that you want a church that you feel is more accessible to you?
Transparent, accountable, those are very important words for the people of the church. You know, when it comes to women's issues, when it comes to the sex abuse crisis, when it comes to LGBT issues, reproductive health care, the church really needs to be transparent and open and welcome women's voices into those issues.
Well, we're all here in anticipation and in suspense to see whether the man who steps out there answers some of the questions that you've been posing.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
That's it from here, Scott.
Thank you.
Mark, thank you. The world's Catholics, 1.2 billion people, the largest religion on earth, waiting to hear what they will have in a new papacy. Will the Pope come from the old world or the new? Will the Pope be doctrinally conservative or more liberal? Nora O'Donnell and Delia Gallagher, let me pull you into the conversation that we were just hearing with Mark Phillips. The church in America is a very different place than in much of the rest of the world. We did a CBS News New York Times poll recently that indicated that a majority of Americans wanted to see, a majority of American Catholics, I should say, wanted to see women in the priesthood.
There are 60 to 70 million Catholics in the United States, and many Catholics want the Catholic Church to address and understand the aspirations of women in the church. And these aren't just women Catholics that are saying this. Cardinal Leonardo Sandri of Argentina said that women must be given more leadership positions in the Vatican. He said, quote, they must have a much more important role in the life of the church. So they're talking about ordaining women as deacons so that they could participate more. That's one of the challenges I think the new Pope will face.
And yet, Delia Gallagher, many of the cardinals who were mentioned prominently as candidates, leading candidates for the papacy, are not in favor of expanding the role of women.
That's correct. I mean, there's two discussions. One is the question of women priests, actually making women and giving them a priestly role. And the other is a question of women having decision-making power in the Vatican. And that is something which I think most of the cardinals, because indeed Benedict XVI was open to appointing women to positions of power in the Vatican, not the highest positions, which is where the problem lies, because in order to be president of a council or in order to have the decision-making power, you have to be a bishop, and therefore you have to be a priest. So the two are related to a certain extent, yet I think at the Vatican they make attempts at least to include women, and it's a very long and slow process. But it has been done. Pope Benedict has said in the past that he wanted to make more room for women and a greater role for women in decision-making things at the Vatican. But it's a different argument from making women priests, which has theological implications that are very, very much more complicated, let's say.
It has been about 40 minutes since we saw the smoke rising from the Sistine Chapel and recognized immediately that it was white smoke, signifying the election of a new pope. And we are expecting any moment now to see those doors over the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica swing open. The first thing we will see will be a small group of cardinals led by the senior cardinal deacon, Jean-Louis Theron, who will announce to the world the name of the Pope in Latin. Alan Pizzi, when that is done and Cardinal Theron has introduced the world to the Pope, what happens next? What can we expect to see?
Well, we can expect to see him step out of the way, and the Pope will step forward. He usually raises his arms in a benediction, a blessing to the crowd, and then he, generally, if he follows tradition now, he will deliver the Urbi et Orbi, a message to the city and the world, giving us some idea of how he intends to conduct his papacy. I think whether it's going to be warm and open, or whether he's going to be perhaps a little bit more stern, saying, look, now we're going to get things right. It's an interesting meeting, if you will, between him and his faithful and the curious, because everybody's going to be standing there looking up at him and wondering, who and what are you? And then remember that he's a long way up on the balcony. We've got nice pictures from good cameras. People will be looking up at the balcony, but also over at those big screens to see him up close. And the look on his face will be one to remember, I think, because what would you think standing up there? And of course, we keep saying it's going to be that would be announced by Jean-Louis Theron, but of course, it is possible that he would be the Pope. He's not been mentioned, he's an outsider, but if he was, then the job would have to pass to someone else. So it's a very complicated situation and an interesting one to wait for, Scott.
It was amazing to see perhaps the most ancient form of mass communication, smoke signals, being broadcast to this crowd on giant digital televisions, a mixture of the old and new, part of the dichotomy of this 2,000-year-old religion. Monsignor Anthony Figueiredo, one of the things that makes this moment so electric for the faithful is that there were no clear frontrunners going into this conclave. We do not know who this Pope will be.
This was an extraordinary conclave, as we've said, because Pope Benedict resigned, indicating that we did need something new here. And certainly we've spoken about some of the Italian cardinals, Cardinal Scola. We've spoken about Cardinal Scherer from Brazil. They were the front runners. But there was always that third figure, which may well arise. Could this be another John Paul II? I liked what you just said, Scott, about the old and the new, because I think that is what sums up the Vatican. We are called to be faithful to what has been given to us now for 2,000 years. And at the same time, we must make that message relevant for the world today. Look at all those millions of people waiting for a message that is relevant, that is going to touch their lives, answer their questions.
Well, speaking of moving the church into the modern age, Nora, you've been looking into the Vatican Twitter account over the last few minutes.
That's right, and we are told that the Pope Twitter account has been reactivated at Pontifex. is back up. It was taken down just as Benedict left. His last tweet was on February 28, 2013. They have reactivated the account for the 266th Pope. And of the 115 cardinals, Scott, that were involved in this conclave, 17 of them have Twitter accounts, including many of them from America, and Cardinal Sean O'Malley, who also blogs regularly. So we'll see if one of these new age cardinals who uses social media becomes the new Holy Father.
One of these modern cardinals coming out to speak in Latin. Mark Phillips is down with the crowd, and he's finding quite a few Americans down there tonight. Mark?
Well, yes, Scott, if you just turn around for a second, there's a bit of a suggestion of Americanism here from both these fellows here who we just pulled out of the crowd, and you came down at what time? About 4 o'clock, you said.
Yeah.
So you've been here, over 3 hours now?
Yeah.
All right. And you're from, I'm sorry, give me your name first.
Jacob Resnick.
Jacob and?
Lincoln.
Okay, Lincoln. You're from New York.
Yep.
Are you a Dolan man then?
Yeah.
Is that what your kind of hope is?
Yes.
And you're from Connecticut, so where's that put you?
O'Malley. Yeah.
Is this a problem between you or not?
No, it hasn't been
really.
yet.
Yeah, not yet.
What assuming it's not between, or even we don't know who's going to step out onto that balcony. What are you guys looking for in the Pope? And have you come down out of religious interest or just kind of out of curiosity to see?
I have curiosity. I'm looking for the next Pope. I think that the Church needs to transition and adapt for a modern, the modern world, the modern times.
And do you have, other than the native son favorite or the New England favorite in O'Malley, do you have anybody who you think would be best for the job?
I really don't specifically.
What about you? Have you thought about it?
I'm just looking for a pope that'll be able to, like he said, modernize the church and get more youth people involved. People of our age group, we are a big population in the world, and to be able to get us involved in the church would be substantial for a lot of people.
It's a massive crowd here, and you're both students in Rome, right? So
Yeah.
you were here, but did you feel a kind of buzz happening that drew you down here? Were you here for the earlier votes, or why are you here now?
Everyone's been talking about it, so there's obviously been a buzz about it. But we knew that they were voting today, so we wanted to just come down and be a part of it.
This was the 5th time they'd voted. Have you come down? Did you come down for the earlier votes?
I was here this afternoon, earlier this morning, to see it. I saw the black smoke this morning, so. And I was just going to keep coming today until they decided. So.
And when you saw the white smoke, what did you think?
I couldn't even put it into words. It was such an exhilarating feeling to be able to see white smoke come out of that chimney. It was awesome.
All right. Well, we're all here in anticipation. We'll see what the next phase of the great mystery unfolding is, who the next Pope will be, Scott.
Mark, thank you. This is a picture of St. Peter's Square in its entirety, the great colonnade going around there. This camera must be on top of St. Peter's Basilica to get a shot like that. A lot of national pride here. You're seeing that's the flag of Chad there on the left, the blue, yellow, and red. People are flying all of their flags because there's a great deal of anticipation that maybe their cardinal, maybe a cardinal from Africa, a cardinal from Asia, a cardinal from Latin America, maybe a cardinal from those places could be the next pope. It is absolutely possible. It has been about 50 minutes since we saw the smoke rising, signifying the election of the pope, and in the next several minutes, we expect to know who the new pope is. Delia Gallagher, what would be happening behind the scenes? What is going on right now, if history is any guide?
Well, I think they take their time greeting the new pope and offering their obedience to him.
The cardinals.
The cardinals, yes. And then the pope himself, of course, takes his time to reflect and pray and gather his thoughts, because, of course, he's gone from being cardinal now to being pope, which I don't suppose any of us can really imagine what's kind of involved emotionally in that step. And then he's got his fittings for his robes, and then has to walk down that long hall to the balcony. So a number of things are being done behind the scenes, which we're not able to see yet, but shortly, obviously, he should be stepping out, because we know they don't like to keep the crowds waiting, and they themselves probably are quite relieved to have made the choice and will be happy to be going to dinner. It reminds me of John Paul I, who apparently said, after he came out on the loggia, and said to the Dean of the Cardinals, "Where do I go to dinner?" Because
what now?
The Pope doesn't have his papal apartments ready yet. They've been sealed off since Benedict XVI left, and so he will go back to the hotel that they have all been staying at, and he will stay there for the next few weeks.
Now, Father Figueiredo, one of the things that is happening now that is new and presumably is happening around this time is that the new Pope will go to the Pauline Chapel, which is really the Pope's own chapel, and he will pray, and he will stay there as long as he likes. Why was that added?
Certainly the challenges that face the new Holy Father, Scott, are enormous, and unless this Holy Father entrusts his whole mission to prayer, to the Lord, he knows it is bound to fail. So in these last weeks, there was an enormous movement, in fact, of young people who were praying for all the cardinals. I heard the last count were 400,000 young people who had each adopted one cardinal. I'm just going through my mind is those young people who chose the Pope who is going to come out. He's praying, and he's going to rely very much on our prayers. Those colonnades are a sign of that. You were talking a little bit earlier on about this massive square. Those colonnades were built as a mother gathering into her arms children who came from every corner of the world and Rome in order to welcome them now into the home of the Father. And we have now a Holy Father, and we call the Church our mother. That is why there's great joy here in Rome tonight.
And that is precisely what we are seeing as we look at this crowd. It appears to have come from nearly every corner of the world. We are watching and waiting, watching closely the doors of the loggia on the front of St. Peter's Basilica. The moment those doors crack open, we will cut to that scene, and we will expect to hear the name of the new Pope pronounced in Latin. It is coming up on almost an hour now since the white smoke was emitted from the chimney at the Sistine Chapel. And if history is any guide, Nora O'Donnell, this is roughly the time that we would expect to see the senior Cardinal Deacon come out to make the announcement.
That's right. Everyone I spoke with said it would be about 50 minutes or so. But you do have to have those 115 cardinals pay homage to him. You do have to give the new Pope, the Holy Father, time to get dressed, to collect his thoughts, and then come out. But given that this was now just about 53 minutes ago, we're right on schedule to hear from the new Holy Father very soon.
Monsignor Figueiredo, help me with my Latin. What does it say across the front of St. Peter's Basilica? What are those words?
It says this basilica was actually built by Paul V back in the 16th century. And in fact, it doesn't say it's St. Peter's Basilica, but it says in honor of the Prince of the Apostles. Paul V built this great basilica in the year, and I believe it was in the 1500s. So it's interesting that Pope chose to put his name on the front and not the name of St. Peter's Basilica.
Well, one of the greatest, perhaps arguably the greatest example of Renaissance architecture in the world, with the contributions of artists like Bernini and Michelangelo. Remarkable building, more beautiful inside than out, if you can imagine such a thing.
And of course the story is that St. Peter's bones are buried underneath the basilica because he was martyred towards the left of the basilica in Nero's circus, crucified upside down during Nero's reign. So that's the reason why the basilica was built over the bones, over the burial site of St. Peter.
Peter was crucified upside down, Delia Gallagher, for what reason?
When there was Nero's persecution of the Christians, remember the Great Fire, and it was blamed on the Christians, and Peter, who was one of the primary Christians in Rome at that time, according to the story, was one of those who was due to be killed, and he asked to be crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy of being crucified in the same way as Jesus.
Alan Pizzi has been covering the Vatican for CBS News for many, many years. And Alan, give us some sense of the transformation that is coming over this man at the moment, the transformation from cardinal to pope.
Scott, it's absolutely total. He will no longer be the person that he was. That person stops being, and the Pope is now who that person is. So it's not just a change of name, it's a change of absolute life and being. You can never go back to what you were. Pope Benedict famously said just about the time he resigned, the Pope does not have a private life. You cannot be anything other than in the spotlight, if you will. Cardinal Schönborn, his mother, who's 93, was quoted the other day as saying she hoped he wasn't made Pope because if he was, she'd never see him again. She said that she could not come here. She was not well enough to come and see him if he became Pope. And if he was Pope, he wouldn't be free to come and visit her. Now, think of that. You're the Pope. You can't actually go and visit your mother because wherever you go, it becomes an enormous state occasion. So you no longer have any kind of real identity other than being the Pope. And I think that must weigh heavily on your mind if you're that person. And the name that he chooses also helps define who and what he hopes to be, what he hopes to bring forth to the world. Interestingly, no one has ever chosen the name of Peter II. No one has ever had the nerve to try that. In fact, the first name change came back in the 6th century. A pope was elected and his name was Mercurius, his given name, and he said he had to change his name because that was the name of a Greek god, and you certainly couldn't have a Catholic pope named after a Greek god. So it's a transformation that's total, not just name, not just lifestyle, but in absolute being, and that must be something very strange to contemplate and not something to be entered into lightly, particularly when you choose your new name, Scott.
Delia Gallagher?
You know, I wonder if after the resignation of Benedict XVI, maybe the idea of the papacy and the office of the papacy hasn't changed somewhat, certainly from John Paul II, which is so identified with his figure and with his person, and this idea that you stay in as Pope until the very end. And now we've had a Pope who's resigned, and so in some way may have resized the idea or changed our idea of what the papacy is. And maybe this next Pope has a different sense that, you know, he can go in and do the best job he can do, but it's obviously also open to him to be able to resign if he felt he couldn't do it. So this remains to be seen, but it certainly has opened up that kind of thinking, I think, in the church, that it no longer has to be allied with the person so much for life.
What about that, Monsignor Figueiredo? Has the Pope turned the papacy, Pope Benedict XVI, by retiring, has he turned it into a job instead of a vocation?
Well, certainly the papacy is tied not so much to the person, but as to the office. And I think that is very important, because if it were tied to a person, he would feel very fallible. But in fact, the gift of infallibility, which means that he often misunderstood, is that he does not err in his teaching office. That's tied to his office. You know, we've had, as the world knows, Scott, popes who haven't always been faithful to the mission. And that is not good. It's beginning. The lights are on.
The lights are on. In the room immediately behind the loggia, and we will expect to see the doors open. A number of Vatican staff members, if history is any guide, will be involved in pulling the curtains back. The papal tapestry will be extended over the front of the balcony. It will be the papal tapestry of Benedict XVI, if history is any guide, because that is the last one that they've had made up. And then we will see not the Pope immediately, but the senior cardinal deacon, Jean-Louis Terran, who will have the responsibility of making the announcement. Nora O'Donnell, what will Terran say to the crowd?
He will say the famous Latin words, habemus papam, a course, we have a pope. And then this will be followed by the name he has picked. Getting our first sight there.
Isn't it exciting?
And of course, as the Monsignor has said, it will be his first name will be given first. So we'll have a guessing game for about 10 seconds.
In Latin.
Unless we don't recognize the Pope. And of course, his first blessing, the Pope's first blessing, will be Urbi et Orbi, which means to the city and to the world. The papal address, an apostolic blessing that is given to the city of Rome and the entire world, and is also given at Christmas time and at Easter time.
Well, we see these shadow figures tantalizingly through those sheer curtains there. Who knows whether one of those shadows was the new Pope. But you will see, if history is a guide, as I say, you will see several people coming out onto the balcony. There will be Vatican staff members who are helping with such things as microphones and bringing the tapestry out to extend beyond the balcony and pulling the curtains back. And then the cardinals, Monsignor, the cardinals will appear on balconies on either side of the loggia.
Yes, in fact, last time one of the senior cardinals, Cardinal Baum from Washington, together, he was a great friend of Cardinal Ratzinger, so perhaps some of those who voted in the new Pope will be very close to him. Interestingly, just under that image of the balcony is a very famous image taken from the sacred scriptures of Jesus handing the keys to Peter. And that's what it's all about. When Jesus gave those keys to Peter, he said, "What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." That's the enormity weighing upon this man's shoulders now. And this is why, when the keys are given, they cannot be taken back again.
The new Pope was elected just over 1 hour ago. We do not know his identity, but we will shortly. The crowd has completely filled St. Peter's Square and extends far beyond the square, down every road and alley all around this part of Rome.
We want the Pope, I think they're singing. I think they're chanting, "We want the Pope, we want the Pope." Beautiful.
Incredible images, and even the rain has let up on cue. It has been raining on us in Rome off and on for 3 days straight, and at this moment it has stopped.
Yeah, we say in Italian, there's a famous saying, "Sposa bagnata, sposa fortunata," which means the bride that is soaked is a very blessed bride. And so I think all this rain is a sign of God's blessing upon this Pope.
The great clock above St. Peter's Basilica, marking 1 hour now since the new Pope was elected, and that massive bell underneath the clock rang out the news across the Eternal City and the world. Delia Gallagher, if you ever wanted to see 100,000 people holding their breath, this is
the
it.
Place. This is the place. I mean, it strikes me that from 8 years ago, they've certainly learned how to get it all together much more quickly, because 8 years ago they hadn't had a conclave in 26 years. But now they're a little bit more refreshed on all of the logistics, and it seems to have gone fairly smoothly. So I would expect that any moment now we will be seeing our new Pope.
And Scott, I don't know if you can tell, but it looks like there have been people walking back and forth behind that curtain. The final preparations.
Sure. The photographers, the most simplest people. That's the wonderful thing about the Holy See. Those who really run the Holy See are the simplest people here, are those who clean the basilicas, the people with the microphones. Look, they're just getting ready there. They're about to open those curtains. There'll be 2 acolytes coming forward carrying candles. The cross will be the first great item that comes forward. And then, as Scott was saying, Cardinal Turan. And then we will see our new Holy Father. There he comes. I can see some movement there. Yeah, they're
For
the
1,000 years and more, popes have come from Europe. What will we have tonight?
The next couple of minutes, we will know. There it goes. There we are. There they are. There they are. There they are. Here they come.
As they speak in Latin, you will hear the translation in English. Senior Cardinal Deacon Turan.
I announce to you a great joy. We have
I
a
announce
pope.
to you good news. We have a pope.
Most eminent and most reverend Lord, Cardinal of the Holy Roman Church, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, who takes the name
Bergoglio from Argentina.
Francis.
He's a friend.
Jesuit.
A Jesuit
From
pope
Argentina.
from Argentina,
Argentina.
the
Amazing.
first pope in 2,000 years
Who was
from the New World.
who was a front runner also, at least discussed
Yes.
last time.
He received, in the last vote, he received 40 in the last election, received 40 votes. A wonderful man of the poor. He goes around Argentina. He doesn't have his own car. He goes on the public transport. Isn't this a great sign for us?
40% of the world's Catholics live in Latin America. And now, in this historic moment, a pope has been elected from Argentina.
It's amazing because they've gone outside of Europe, but they've also gone to a Jesuit for the first time. And I bet the Jesuits are surprised and possibly celebrating. And
This
that's
is
a big
incredible.
deal. The
It's
Jesuits, the head of the Jesuits is already known as the Black Pope, so I don't know what that means, but
What is the significance, Delia, for our audience in the Catholic Church of this new pope being a Jesuit?
well, the Jesuits have a long history of, we could say, relationship with the papacy, sometimes contentious. And first of all, we should mention that the Jesuits are what they call an order of the Catholic Church. So like the Dominicans and like the Franciscans, they don't tend to become pope, They don't tend to become bishops.
They are extending the papal tapestry, and we are hearing that the new pope has chosen the name Francis.
Beautiful. It's interesting. Some years ago, Scott, Cardinal Bergoglio gave me a medal, and it bore the image of the Virgin Mary untying knots. Maybe this is what he wants for his papacy, that the knots in the church are now untied for the good of people. Isn't this wonderful for us?
Born in Buenos Aires, a native of Argentina. Was ordained in the Jesuit order in 1969.
A surprise, huh?
As the Vatican staff prepares the loggia, we will be seeing the Pope very shortly, who we are told has taken the name Francis.
Beautiful.
That's a lovely choice.
That's a beautiful name.
lovely choice. The simplicity of St. Francis and St. Francis's work and love for the poor, I think, is very symbolic in that choice.
Really, and you know what? So when Francis converted, he received a word from Jesus, Francis, rebuild my church. Francis, rebuild my church. And Francis thought it was with bricks and mortar. Then he realized it was a demoralized church. I believe this is what Cardinal Bergoglio, Pope Francis, wants to do for the Church be a sign of poverty, simplicity, humility, and rebuild the Church for the good of Catholics and non-Catholics?
Well, the former Cardinal Bergoglio is an advocate for the poor and has championed social programs in his native Argentina. And he has questioned free market economics, which he has blamed for impoverishing some people in the world. The curtains have closed. We can expect that the next time we see them open, the world will be introduced to Pope Francis.
The first.
Francis the First. Yeah. Monsignor, you know this man.
I do. This is
Tell us more.
Absolutely incredible, because he's a man of such enormous simplicity who would never have wished the papacy. But by the cardinals choosing him, he is that third man we on CBS have been talking about. You know, we were saying that there are these front runners, but perhaps the cardinals will go with someone completely unexpected to give a sign to the world. And this man, who is 76, I think that's very significant as well, because he knows that he has just a short space of time now to make an enormous difference for the world. He doesn't want all the pomp and circumstance perhaps that the Vatican Curia has been embroiled in recent years. We are in, I believe, for very big change in the right direction, Scott.
And what change would you expect from him?
I believe we're going to become a church that symbolizes greater poverty, both in its mode of preaching, both in its mode of acting, and especially for looking after those who are poor, the sick, the suffering, those in need. I think people tonight across the United States, across the whole world, can be filled with great hope and great joy.
You know, in a very interesting way, he is a bridging figure between the history of the church and the future of the church. His parents were Italian immigrants. His heritage is Italian, but he was born in the New World.
That's right, and he was appointed by John Paul II. He was in the running for Pope the last time, but I think what he is most known for is his humility. I mean, he is from the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit, was a philosopher, so he clearly has that academic background that is key, but a man who has chosen to live in a tiny apartment instead of the finery that he could live in, known to cook his own meals, and has given up the limousine that is afforded a cardinal and instead walks or takes a taxi. So that will certainly be something to remark on. It's not clear his background in terms of management. We heard so much, many of the scholars that I spoke with, Catholic experts, talked about the need for someone who can govern and reform the Curia.
The Curia being the governing body, essentially, of the church here in Rome, the Pope's cabinet, if you will. Delia Gallagher, what are the cardinals? Oh, here is the picture. We believe this is the first picture of Francis I. Oh, I'm sorry, this is file picture. I beg your pardon. This is the man who will be introduced to the world as Francis I. That is Cardinal Bergoglio of Argentina. He will be, I should say, the new Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. Delia, tell us, what are the cardinals saying to the world in making this selection?
Well, you talk about him bridging Europe and the developing world, but he also bridges, I think, the conservative-liberal divide, if you will, within the cardinals, the College of Cardinals. That is to say that, yes, he's not a Vatican insider, which has obviously also worked in his favor, but he's acceptable to those in the Curia. I mean, that's clear by the fact that he's been elected, but also because he was talked about in the previous conclave. And I think we've got pictures there from inside. That certainly looked like
that was it.
Cardinal
That picture
Bergoglio.
that we just saw was live. That was your first image of the man who is now known as Francis I, the new Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. Any minute now, we will see the red curtains part and he will be introduced to the world.
A great linguist as well. He speaks Italian fluently, Spanish. It'll be interesting to see what languages he uses tonight.
Mark Phillips says we're waiting to see the curtain part.
There we are, the cardinals.
Well, before we go to Mark, let us explain to you what's happening. These are the cardinal electors. These are the cardinals who just made one of their own, Francis I. They will walk out on the balconies as you see. The new Pope, Francis I.
Seems to be wearing his own cross there, which I think is already a sign of great simplicity.
Oh, not the jeweled one.
Remember, we saw earlier images of jeweled crosses he might have chosen. This seems to be his own very simple cross.
Brothers and sisters, good evening. You know that I must say to you that I came here as a Bishop of Rome. My brothers, everybody came from all parts of the world. I thank you for this greeting you give me. Thank you so much. But first of all, and above all, I would like to declare a prayer for our beloved Benedict XVI. Altogether, we should pray for him. And I know that the Madonna will receive him. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mother, Mother of God, pray for us, now and at the hour of our death. Gloria to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Now, let's begin this long road from the Bishop of Rome to the people. Let us all behave with love and charity. Let us go along this road of fraternity and faith in ourselves. Let us pray always, not just for ourselves, but for others, for everyone in the world, because there is a great brotherhood among us. I wish for you that this road of the church that we're beginning today, and with which my brother cardinals who are present here will help me with in this beautiful city. Now, I would like to give the benediction, but first, I'm going to ask a favor of you. Before we bless the people, I hope that you will bless me, the benediction of the people toward the Bishop of Rome. So in silence now, let's do this prayer for me. Holy Father Francesco, by means of radio, television, and new technology, we all receive the prayer that you give to us. We pray that the Pope may live long and that he will be able to have peace through the Church all over the world. And now, my benediction to you and the whole world, to all the men and women of goodwill.
May the holy apostles Peter and Paul, in whose power and authority we have confidence, intercede on our behalf to the Lord. Through the prayers and merits of the Blessed Mary Ever Virgin, of Blessed Michael the Archangel, of Blessed John the Baptist, and of the holy apostles Peter and Paul, and of all the saints. May Almighty God have mercy on you, and with all of your sins forgiven, may Jesus Christ lead you into everlasting life, indulgence, absolution, and remission of all of your sins, time for a true and fruitful penance, and always repentant heart and amendment of life, grace and consolation of the Holy Spirit, and final perseverance in good works. May the Almighty and merciful Lord grant you all of this. And may the blessing of Almighty God, and of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit descend upon you and remain with you always.
we are witnessing what is a great departure for the Roman Catholic Church. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Church has reached to the New World to elect a cardinal, the new Pope, Francis I. Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio of Argentina. The Church recognizing the reality today that Latin America is the fastest growing Catholic region in the world, with 40% of the world's Catholics. Monsignor Anthony Figueiredo, you know this man. Who do we have as Pope?
I'm amazed. It's a true surprise for the world, because we have a man who's extremely humble, who's going to listen to the people. Wasn't it amazing that he asked the people to bless him? So he's not so much going to be giving to us as listening now to the voices of the world.
And he's speaking again.
Thank you so much. I leave you now, and thank you so much for the greeting. Please pray for me. And we'll see you soon. I want to go pray to the Madonna tomorrow. And so I'm going to say to all Romans, good night, and have a good sleep.
He seems to have a simple pastoral touch.
Reminds me very much of Pope John the 23rd, whom they call the Papa Buono, the good Pope.
Delia Gallagher, what is the Church saying to the world in this moment?
Well, I think it's just the perfect choice, and we didn't expect it because we've been talking about somebody who can be a manager and somebody who can do this and do that. But you know, what's really needed is a holy man, and I think a man who can show that simplicity of holiness. And I mean, we've just seen it in the last 5 minutes, and we've seen it in the choice of his name, Francis. You know, Saint Francis, I don't think any greater saint or emblem of simplicity and communion with the poor and so on. So I think it's a very lovely choice, and he can do the rest of it, selecting his Secretary of State and putting in position a whole group around him that will help him with the governance of the Church. There you see Cardinal George and Cardinal Pelley of Australia, Cardinal George of Chicago.
Mark Phillips is down in the crowd of tens of thousands of people that have come from, it appears, every corner of the world. Mark?
Scott, if the reaction of this crowd is any indication, this is a very welcome ascension of a new pope. There's almost a palpable change in the tone of the papacy that the people here noticed. Speaking not only in ecclesiastical language, but also speaking in the language of the street, beginning by saying, brothers and sisters, good evening, as if you were meeting them on the street, ending by telling them to go home and have a good night, he said, before praying to the Madonna tomorrow. A completely different tone here. I can only imagine the scenes, not just here in Rome, but of course in Buenos Aires tonight. It should be quite a party. The crowd's reaction, I don't think I've ever stood in a place before when one man says, let's be silent. They all go silent completely for a minute, and then universal applause across the square.
Alan Pizzi is also with us in St. Peter's Square as we hear the bells peal across the eternal city. Alan?
Scott, I think this is a choice that meets most of the characteristics that all the cardinals we spoke to before the conclave said they wanted. They wanted a man of God, a humble man. They also wanted someone who would carry on the Church's teachings in strictly doctrinal terms. And this new pope is a conservative. He opposes same-sex marriage and abortion. He has said that adoption by gay couples is discrimination against children. He's a strong advocate of celibacy, but he also has been in favor of tightening up the church hierarchy to cut down on dissent. And that was one of the big things they wanted, a manager, and they may have got it. And an interesting personal note about the new pope, he has only one lung. He lost one of his lungs in an operation when he was a child. So this is a man who knows suffering, and as everyone has said, he has lived a very humble life. He seems to have touched each of the points that the cardinals we spoke to before the conclave said they needed in a pope. So whether or not he was a compromise candidate, he seems to be the one that they think that matched everything that they wanted. They seem to have got the man they need. We'll see, but it certainly sounds like it, Scott.
Alan, thank you. Nora O'Donnell, this has been quite a night. It has been about an hour and a half since we first saw the white smoke rise above the Sistine Chapel, and now we have been introduced to a new Pope, Francis I.
An extraordinary evening, and the Catholic Church has decided to choose someone who will continue, I think, in the legacy of Pope Benedict. Pope Francis I is ultra-Orthodox, ultra-conservative. He's also 76 years old. He's just 2 years younger than Pope Benedict was when he was elected. So this is an older choice for the cardinals. And as you mentioned, Latin America, I mean, home to nearly 500 million Catholics, the new world. That's the sign. And by choosing the name Pope Francis, which was a name that I had guessed might be used as a sign of poverty. And then finally, he is the first pope to be a Jesuit. There will be a lot of discussion among theologians that he is a Jesuit and the Holy Father. That will have a lot of people talking.
The crowd began filling St. Peter's Square several hours ago in a driving rain. They came to see if the smoke would be black or white. After really only 5 ballots, which began yesterday, most people were beginning to think that they would see black smoke again and the voting would continue tomorrow. But then the realization came that the smoke was white and that they were here to see history. Bells ringing all across Rome tonight, and one suspects all around the world. Mark Phillips is down in the crowd for us tonight. He's been talking to a number of people, including a lot of Americans down there this evening. Mark?
Scott, the crowd is just beginning to filter off this huge crowd which had come from all over Rome to see this momentous event take place. They're just heading off now, and I must say all of the comments here are extremely positive. This is a different kind of pope that they've been used to seeing, certainly for the last 8 years, and of course in the fading years of John Paul before that, there was difficulties with his energy levels and that kind of thing. The crowd seemed, in fact, energized by this pope. They seemed impressed by the normalness, the humility of his language. They responded, both when he asked them for their blessing, he asked them for their blessing, which was a truly extraordinary moment. They went to complete silence for that, and then responded extremely positively to his blessing of them and to his good wishes to them, saying that thanking them for coming and then telling them to go home and drive carefully, if you will. So altogether, a much more colloquial exchange between this massive crowd and this man, this Pope Francis, who they appear to be quite happy to see up there. Scott?
Monsignor Anthony Figueredo, you know Pope Francis. You've known him for a long time. There are so many significant issues facing the church. There's the sex abuse scandal. There are financial difficulties. There are fights within the Roman Curia, the cabinet of the Pope, if you will. How will this Pope deal with those very real problems of the church?
Scott, this is an incredibly courageous choice. This man will love the poor, not only the materially poor, but those who have been forgotten, those who have suffered any kind of injustice in their lives, those who have experienced scandal or corruption, unfortunately even here in the Holy See. This is what we are going to see in this man, a man who truly reaches out to the last ones. God is faithful. Jesus did that. He went to the last ones. And I think that in the choice of this man who has one lung, who would choose a man who has one lung, if not the Holy Spirit? So I think we are in for great change, for great fidelity to Jesus.
Delia Gallagher?
Well, it's going to be important, I think, to see who he chooses as his Secretary of State. And that'll be a key appointment that will give us an idea of how the shakedown might happen within the Vatican offices, because he is an outsider in terms of working at the Vatican. He belongs to many of the commissions and the councils, so he is known within the Vatican. But in terms of the sort of back dealings of the Vatican, he will need a very strong Secretary of State who is familiar with that territory. And then I think he'll be in good stead if he's able to get that into place. That's the vital thing about dealing with Vatican governance.
An interesting transitional figure, Nora O'Donnell. His parents were Italian, and they immigrated to Argentina. He was born in Buenos Aires, so he is the son of Italians, but born in the New World.
Yes, speaks Italian fluently, was one of 4 children, and at first wanted to be a chemist, and then decided to pursue the priesthood. So he certainly, I can only imagine what's going on in Buenos Aires this morning and in Argentina and quite frankly in Latin America with this appointment. I think the challenges for this new Pope are big. We've talked about this. The church is at a crossroads, and it's not just the Vatican scandal. Remember that just before Benedict resigned, he looked at that report. This will be something that the new Pope has to look at, which deals with some issues. The church's finances, which are still secret to most of the world. There are a number of challenges for the church.
You know, Nora, when Benedict XVI, just before he was elected, he spoke about the filth in the church. That was the term he used. And at the time we thought maybe that just referred to sex abuse scandals, but we now know that it refers to a lot of the corruption, basically, that was going on. Well, now he's resigned, but presumably that filth hasn't been entirely cleaned up. So that is what we talk about when we say the governance of the Vatican.
Well, Nora, you said that he wanted to be a chemist early in life, but he certainly had chemistry with this crowd tonight. He asked them to love, to have charity, fraternity, and faith in ourselves. Not necessarily the first thing he said, faith in God, but faith in ourselves. What was the message there, Monsignor?
Again, I think he is looking at those who perhaps in any way feel that they've been forgotten in society, that God can raise up the lowly, that he can raise us up from the dust heap, and he can do great things with us. This man did not expect to be Pope, I can tell you that. He did not want to be Pope, and he knows that what God has done in him, he can do in every single person, out in the square, but throughout the world.
What has his ministry been about in Argentina?
Effectively, one, going out to the poor. This is a man who rides the subway tram. This is a man who takes public transport. He wants to be one with the people. And this is what the challenge of the church is. Perhaps we've grown too big. Perhaps we've forgotten those who really need a message of hope in their lives.
As we see the pictures from earlier when he was first shown to the world, Monsignor Figueroa, you mentioned the cross that he was wearing. What did you notice?
What I've noticed, it seems to be very much his own cross. We were looking earlier on together at images of these wonderful, beautiful crosses full of jewels and gold that the new Pope Francis might have chosen. To my eyes, that seems like the simplest of crosses. And I think that truly summarizes his character. I want simplicity, and I want to simply be faithful to what Jesus was faithful to, effectively reaching the poor, the hungry, those who have no one to love them in this world. I am going to love you with compassion and love.
Nora?
On that very note, I mean, speaking of Pope Francis' compassion, he has shown great compassion for the victim of HIV/AIDS, and while at the same time sticking to the ultra-Orthodox views of the church. He's shown them great compassion. In 2001, he was known to visit a hospice and kiss and wash the feet of 12 AIDS patients. So that has been part of his ministry, that sort of compassion.
And I think also coming from Argentina. He's obviously come from a country which for the past few decades has had severe economic difficulties, and so he knows how to speak to the people during those times. And we kind of sensed that even tonight. And so what better man for our times now?
Such a remarkable moment when in the beginning of his comments he said, I need to ask you a favor. I want you to bless me. What did you think of that?
He wants to rely on us. And one of the press spokesmen today from the Vatican City State said to me he's been really moved by the American media. And he spoke very highly of CBS because you are bringing this message to people who are far away. We are here in this square. So what he was saying, I want you to help me, he's also saying to people in the press, get my message across. I have not forgotten you, and I rely on you for my ministry henceforth.
We have a CBS News correspondent in Buenos Aires, Elaine Cobb. And Elaine, I can only imagine what is happening there now. Tell us what you're seeing and hearing.
Well, in fact, the Argentinians really didn't expect that their candidate would win. So there hadn't been a lot of preparation for this, but now, of course, people are heading to the main cathedral and to the main square in Buenos Aires, the main square which is frequently used for protests and, in fact, already has a lot of banners demanding abortion, which the new Pope, of course, is against. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of the two, of protest and celebration preparing here.
Well, it will certainly be a new day when in Argentina tomorrow, when the news of this begins to soak in. What an amazing transformation that will be for that country and Latin America overall, where 40% of the world's Catholics now live in Latin America. Clearly, the cardinals in this decision reaching out to that growing part of the church.
And you know, one of the real challenges for Pope Francis now, and I think the main challenge of the Catholic Church, is how to bring a message of Christianity to a world that is indifferent, if not hostile, to religious messages in general. And you know, that's what they talk about when they talk about the new evangelization, is how to bring that gospel message to the modern world.
I think he will also return some attention to the social justice teachings of the Catholic Church, which many people think have been lost and are the most popular aspects of the Catholic Church, the social justice aspects, and what nuns and priests have done throughout the world to help the poor. And so he embodies that sort of Latin American Catholicism. In Argentina, as in much of Latin America, very unequal situation for economically between poor and wealthy. So it's possible as a pope, if he chooses to focus on that he could refocus attention on what is, many people believe, are some of the best teachings of the church, which are in social justice.
Yeah, and South America is the land of liberation theology, which, you know, from the 60s and the 70s was quite a controversial thing. And a lot of these cardinals now support, you know, the social aspect of that, the help for the poor and so on, without accepting some of the ideology that went along with it. And I think he falls into that camp.
Well, as we take in the news of seeing the first non-European pope in 1,000 years introduced to the world here tonight, let's go to Alan Pizzi, who has been watching this and has covered previous papal elections. Alan?
Scott, it's interesting to note that according to news that leaked out from the last conclave, Cardinal Bergoglio, now Pope Francis, came second to Cardinal Ratzinger, who became Benedict XVI. He was in the running right up to the last minute, so he seems to have been a candidate that they were thinking about a long way back. We keep mentioning his simplicity and the way he used to travel on streetcars when he was a cardinal in Buenos Aires. It's going to be very interesting to see how he takes this message to the people, because he's going to have to travel. All popes have to travel. it tends to be a big ostentatious deal when a pope goes on a trip. I've been on many of them, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where he goes and how he goes and what countries he chooses to really put a focus on. Obviously, he's going to have to go to World Youth Day in Rio de Janeiro in I think it's August. He'll certainly have to go back to his homeland, but after that, where will he go? Benedict concentrated quite a lot on Europe because he felt that Europeans were going away from the church and he needed to bring them back. Latinos make up 40% of the Catholic Church, so Francis is going to have to do a lot in Latin America, but there are many other impoverished areas of the world where his kind of message, his kind of humbleness will do a lot to bring people into the church, I would think. So I'm thinking we're going to see him going to places like Africa, the Philippines, and other parts of Asia to bring that message to them and to be the simple kind of pastor that he is. He's also not known to be a friend of the Roman Curia. He's not a favorite of the Curia cardinals, and in fact, by him being elected, it's kind of a snub to them because they didn't get one of their own, as it were. So he's got a big job to do here in Rome as well. It's one huge challenge, and it'll be interesting to see how a simple, humble man, if you will, like him, actually carries it out. Scott.
Alan, thank you. Monsignor Figueiredo, is this the man to clean up the problems in the Vatican, to seize control of the Curia, the cabinet, if you will, of the Pope? Does he have those qualities?
I have no doubt. He must know he has been given a very strong mandate because he was not a front runner. You know, we were thinking of Cardinal Scola, who has much better qualities administratively, but this man now has a clear mandate from 115 cardinals to come in and clear up the Curia. Just to go back to that medal he left me again, which I think is very significant, of the Blessed Mother with a rope of cords, untying them. I think that's what we're going to see. He's going to untie all these knots that we've seen in the Curia, in the church, the scandals, in order to clean up and take us forward in a pure and new way.
This was a gift he gave to you when he was cardinal.
I have it in my bedroom at home, and just a couple of weeks, I know that I'll be seeing the Holy Father at a meeting that was already scheduled, whoever the Holy Father was, and I will be sure to show him again that medal. It's very moving for us tonight.
Delia, what happens next for the Pope this evening?
Well, this evening he goes back to the hotel like he did last night. He doesn't have a home at the moment. The papal apartments are still sealed off, so it will take them 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get that all together, and he moves in his furniture and so on. I mean, he doesn't go back to Buenos Aires. He stays in the hotel here at the Vatican until his apartments are ready. And of course, right away, he'll have to start thinking about who is he going to have as his cabinet and what are going to be some of his priorities.
All of the leading officials in the Vatican lose their jobs.
Correct.
The moment that Benedict leaves and is no longer Pope.
Yes.
So he has to restaff the entire cabinet, if you will, almost like an American president.
He doesn't have to do it right away. Sometimes they'll, just reappoint for an interim period to give himself a little bit of room to reflect and figure out who he wants to put in. So he may do that as well on some of the positions, but on the key positions, he's got to figure out who his cabinet is.
And speaking of the papal apartments, Scott, you can see them. They're actually right over your shoulder between you and the Monsignor, and it might be difficult to tell, but the shutters are closed for a reason. And actually, I did get to see, in fact, the papal elevator, which takes the Pope up, and that is sealed shut with almost masking tape and a seal on it, only to be used when the new Pope comes. So they take this tradition quite seriously. In fact, here's the picture right here of where they have sealed this very small elevator until Pope Francis, I guess, will get to use it again.
So, we have just witnessed the election of a new Pope from the New World for a new age. The headline of the hour here in Rome: the world's 1.2 billion Catholics have a new spiritual leader. He will be known as Pope Francis, the first Pope from the Americas. Until today, he was the 76-year-old Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio, a member of the Jesuit order, and now he is the 265th successor of St. Peter. There'll be much more about Pope Francis on your local news on this CBS station, on our CBS News website, cbsnews.com. First thing tomorrow morning on CBS This Morning with Nora O'Donnell and Charlie Rose right here in Rome. And of course, we'll be with you shortly on the CBS Evening News. Until then, for all of us at CBS News, I'm Scott Pelley, CBS News in Rome.
For news 24 hours a day, go to cbsnews.com.